SKOL'd to the bowl. Whole lot of SKOL'd gang on this one. Yeah. Hey. SKOL'd gang, SKOL'd gang, SKOL'd gang, SKOL'd gang, SKOL'd gang, SKOL'd gang, SKOL'd gang. SKOL'd on the way to the bowl, man. My team about to go get a ring. We don't care what your team doing, man. They ain't messing with the perp gang. It's our year, time to get this ring. Bring it home back to the SKOL'd gang. SKOL'd gang, SKOL'd gang, SKOL'd gang, SKOL'd gang, SKOL'd gang, SKOL'd gang, SKOL'd gang. SKOL'd on the way to the bowl, man. My team about to go get a ring. We don't care. SKOL'd to the bowl. Whole lot of SKOL'd gang on this one. Yeah. Hey. SKOL'd gang, SKOL'd gang, SKOL'd gang, SKOL'd gang, SKOL'd gang, SKOL'd gang, SKOL'd gang. SKOL'd on the way to the bowl, man. My team about to go get a ring. We don't care what your team doing, man. They ain't messing with the perp gang. It's our year, time to get this ring. Bring it home back to the SKOL'd gang. SKOL'd gang, SKOL'd gang, SKOL'd gang, SKOL'd gang, SKOL'd gang, SKOL'd gang, SKOL'd gang. SKOL'd on the way to the bowl, man. My team about to go get a ring. We don't care. SKOL'd to the bowl. Whole lot of SKOL'd gang on this one. Yeah. Hey. SKOL'd gang, SKOL'd gang, SKOL'd gang, SKOL'd gang, SKOL'd gang, SKOL'd gang, SKOL'd gang. SKOL'd on the way to the bowl, man. My team about to go get a ring. We don't care what your team doing, man. They ain't messing with the perp gang. It's our year, time to get this ring. Bring it home back to the SKOL'd gang. SKOL'd gang, SKOL'd gang, SKOL'd gang, SKOL'd gang, SKOL'd gang, SKOL'd gang, SKOL'd gang. SKOL'd on the way to the bowl, man. My team about to go get a ring. We don't care.
What is going on, everybody? It is your boy SK. I'm here with Mike Castellino, and this is Purple and SKOL'd Media. We are doing our top 5. Let me get my mic right. Jesus. Let me get it right. There we go. But welcome in. We are doing another top 5. Me and Mike were here, what was it, last week or maybe a week before that. We did our top 5 Vikings plays of all time, and we drafted them. So this time we're going to do things a little bit different. We're just going to do our straight top 5 quarterbacks of all time, give our own opinions on that. We're not going to do it draft style because, unfortunately, the Minnesota Vikings don't have a very long list of great quarterbacks to choose from. So we're going to do our own top 5. But before we get down to things, how we feeling, Mike? It's been a week or so since we talked.
I'm pretty good, SK, as a whole. I know that this is cheesy, but I'm just waiting for the Daniel Hunter situation to get over and done with. I feel like that's going to drag into training camp, unfortunately. We'll have to deal with that when we get there. But I'm enjoying the new Netflix series Quarterback. It's been pretty enjoyable, and it's a way to get through this dead period in the NFL offseason.
Yes, perfect timing. We are literally 22 days away from the Hall of Fame game, which is on August 3rd, I believe. So we're literally right around the corner from NFL football. But as you said, just like the Netflix series Quarterback, we are going to touch on that a little bit because obviously Kirk Cousins is one of the 3 quarterbacks on the show. And I watched the first 2 episodes. I think he's kind of leaning towards the star of the show right now. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes, but you're getting a lot of details that you're not going to get on, team sites and videos you find on YouTube. There's a lot of good detail that you guys want to get from that Netflix series. So we're going to touch on those first 2 episodes, and I think we'll kind of make it a weekly thing. So every week we're going to touch on maybe 2 or 3 episodes until the end of it. I think there's 8 episodes to it, maybe 10.
I think it's 8. Yeah.
8 episodes. So yeah, for the next couple of weeks, me and Mike and maybe somebody else will hop on here and we'll discuss a couple of the episodes on that Netflix series. But let's get down to what we are here for, Mike. Our top 5 quarterbacks of all time for the Minnesota Vikings. I got some curveballs in mind, and I kind of took some biased stances because a lot of the guys I wasn't able to see live, so outside of Fran Tarkenton, a lot of the guys I left off the list because I wasn't able to really see them in person. So my list may be a little bit quonky, but hey, we're going to work with it. I know Mike's going to have some fun ones for us as well. But let's get down to it. And let's start from 5 down to 1 for each one. So what we're going to do is I'll reveal my 5th, Mike will reveal his 5th, then Mike will reveal his 4th, I'll reveal my 4th, and so on. So I'll go first. My 5th rated quarterback on my list for all-time quarterbacks for the Minnesota Vikings. And this kind of may surprise some people. It was a very short stint with the Minnesota Vikings. But again, this is my lifetime and the memories that this quarterback brought me. And that's Randall Cunningham. Quarterback, 3 years with the Minnesota Vikings, went 16-7, 60% completion percentage, 5,680 yards, 48 touchdowns, and obviously gave us that crazy 1998 season with Randy Moss, Chris Carter, and obviously we fell short on that. But nonetheless, a year to remember, one of the greatest years in Minnesota Vikings history. That is my number 5 quarterback of all time. Mike, who you got?
You know what, SK? I'm going to go on a bit of a limb, have a little bit of fun with it. Number 5 Vikings quarterback all time. This is a little bit out there, but I'll do it anyway. Case Keenum. And I think that 2017 run has to be remembered. It's one of the farthest playoff runs I've seen in my lifetime, where they did get to the NFC title game. Obviously, we don't talk about that Philly game much at all. Yeah. But at the end of the day, he completed the most iconic pass in Vikings history to Stephon Diggs and the Minneapolis Miracle. So I'll put Case Keenum at number 5.
Yeah, I wanted to put him on this list really bad. And I was tempted to. I was very tempted. But again, it's the memories that Case Keenum brought us. And it wasn't just Case Keenum. Obviously, you have Stephon Diggs in the mix. You have the plays Adam Thielen was adding to that, the defense that year. But yes, obviously Case Keenum giving us the memory, not just a memory. He gave us the memory in the Minneapolis Miracle. I'm off today. To Stephon Diggs. But yeah, I struggle putting him on this list just off the fact that it wasn't long enough. It was he didn't even give us a full season. What was it? 12 games, 13 games, I think. So that's where I struggle putting him on this list. But nonetheless, I can't knock you for that. Can't knock you. What's your 4th?
Number 4, I'll go Randall Cunningham as well. 1998, I think, is the closest the Vikings got him, like really in the time that I was alive, though I don't remember it at all. They were literally a Gary Anderson field goal away from a Super Bowl appearance that has to get remembered. And it's a similar idea to why I put Keenum at number 5. I always take into account postseason success into these type of lists. Now, obviously, the Vikings don't have a deep history with quarterbacks. It's really Fran Tarkenton and about basically everybody else. But I'll stick Randall Cunningham at number 4.
Yeah, obviously I had him at number 5, so I can't argue that. My number 4, 2009 Brett Favre. I'm not even going to count 2010. 2009 Brett Favre. In that 1 year, he had 2 game-winning drives, went 12-4, 68% completion percentage, 4,202 yards, 33 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and obviously that crucial 2009 NFC Championship game, which you live by Brett Favre, you die by Brett Favre, and that's exactly what happened to the Minnesota Vikings that year in the NFC Championship game with that late pick. But again, that year was special, man. That year was special, just like the 2017 year with Case Keenum, where there was a few plays during that season where you're just like, wow, like, okay, this might be the year. Everything's going our way. And I mean, to be honest, this past season was kind of that way. Everything was going our way throughout the regular season, and we kind of had that little bit of belief to where we understood, okay, look, our offensive line isn't the best. We obviously don't have the best roster in the league. Backs against the wall, probably not the favorite to win it this year, but sometimes you need a little luck, and all that luck was going our way. But 2009 was one of those years where everything was going our way. We had that Greg Lewis from Brett Favre touchdown catch against the 49ers with, 6 seconds left. And then you had I think the Baltimore game where we had to drive downfield with like a minute left, kick the field goal to beat the Baltimore Ravens to stay undefeated. But no, 2009 Brett Favre, I don't think it's, that hard to put Brett Favre up there with that. So 2009 Brett Favre, that's my number 4 quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings history. Number 3, I think this is where it gets a little crazy, right? Number 2 and number 3, I think we'll probably all agree on number 1 here. But number 2 and number 3 is where it gets spicy, right, Mike? That's where That's where it's Dante or Kirk, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Oop. You can still hear me, right?
I can hear you. I don't know what happened to your picture, but I can hear you.
Okay, so yeah, no, this is where it gets kind of quonky right here. Are we going Kirk? Are we going Dante Culpepper? And while I'm fixing my camera, I'm going to go Dante Culpepper as my number 3 quarterback all time for the Minnesota Vikings. Now, again, I'm gonna get ridiculed by some people because the whole Kirk Cousins can't win the big game, blah 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 blah. But if you want to compare the stats, and I'm pretty much revealing my number 2 quarterback overall, but if you reveal the stats, Culpepper, his overall record 38-42, 64% completion percentage, just over 20,000 yards, 135 touchdowns, and 248 yards per game. Kirk Cousins, over 5 years, 46, 33 and 1, 67.8% completion percentage, just under 21,000 yards, 153 touchdowns, and 261 yards per game. So obviously they're pretty close as far as the stats go. But if you want to talk about winning football games, Kirk Cousins was better at winning football games than Dante Culpepper was. So, I mean, you can ridicule me all you want, but the proof is in the pudding. Kirk Cousins has a better winning percentage than Dante Culpepper as a Minnesota Vikings quarterback. So I got to go Dante Culpepper at number 3.
I'm going to just change it up just for the sake of changing it up. And one thing I do want to add on Culpepper, because I don't have him on my list, I'm not going to include him just because might as well I talk about different quarterbacks. He had serious fumbling problems too, legitimate fumbling problems. And it doesn't get talked about enough. The guy averaged way too many fumbles in a season-to-season basis because of his small hands. That's why I discount him personally ahead of Cousins, but I'm just going to leave him off the list just to be different. I know Tommy Kramer, number 3. I'm going to go with Tommy Kramer. Miracle the Met, gets the Cleveland Browns, and I just think I want to include some of the old school guys just to be completely fair. That play is one of the most iconic in Vikings history to Ahmad Rashad, and I think it deserves a place here. Tommy Kramer on the top 5, so I'm going to include him at number 3.
Yeah, and again, like before we started, revealing our list, I said I left some guys out that I wasn't able to watch in person. So a guy like Tommy Kramer would probably be on the overall list if I was looking at it in a whole. But no, I can't argue against that. Number 3, Tommy Kramer. Okay, so you said you left Culpepper completely off the list.
Just to change it up. Obviously, if I'm being honest, I should have probably included him, but I'm just going to be different with it. Just change it up, talk about different guys. It's just easier that way instead of us talking about the same guy over and over. Because the last 2 on our list are going to be the exact same. So,
yeah, I think we all know who number 1 is. So that is going to go to. I think you go to your number 2 now, right? Or did you reveal
Yep.
Yep, your number 2.
Kirk Cousins.
Kirk Cousins.
It's got to be Kirk Cousins. And look, a lot of people say, how dare you put Kirk Cousins on a number 2 of Vikings quarterbacks all time? And yes, does he need to get some more postseason wins? Yeah, sure he does.
Yeah.
But I've talked about this far too many times. There's a lot of circumstances and context that a lot of people like to ignore about the Kirk Cousins era in Minnesota. Mike Zimmer never getting, really him a real opportunity to be his quarterback. Bashed him since day 1, never gave him a fair shake. Tony Sperano passing away, the O-line never recovered from that. Rest in peace to him. And just the amount of poor interior offensive linemen in the Cousins era too. But no, Kirk Cousins to me, statistically, he deserves to be in number 2. Consistent every single season. You know what you're going to get. And yes, is there games you want to pull your hair out? 100%. And I will get into that when we talk about the quarterback show. There was something that really ticked me off when I was watching the first 2 episodes. But as a whole, Kirk Cousins is a very stable quarterback, and that's not easy to come by. I always call him the Tony Romo of the Minnesota Vikings, where once he leaves, people will appreciate him more.
Yeah. And I mean, this is kind of off topic going on to the Dallas Cowboys, but it's not like they moved on to a terrible quarterback. They moved on to Dak Prescott, who, essentially is kind of Kirk Cousins. So you can't be too mad at that if you're a Cowboys fan. But again, number 2, like I said, Kirk Cousins, I agree. You can't really knock it, but you're really knocking the Minnesota Vikings. This isn't a knock against Kirk Cousins. It's more of the lack of quarterback play from the Minnesota Vikings franchise. And a stable quarterback, a very good quarterback, and Kirk Cousins simply just a franchise quarterback. Kirk Cousins is a franchise quarterback, but not necessarily the guy, So the thing we've been arguing about for 5 years now, 6 years now. So again, Kirk Cousins number 2, but that's more a shot at the Minnesota Vikings franchise as a whole with the quarterback position. So number 1, I think we agree here, Fran Tarkenton, right? We're all going Fran Tarkenton, number 1. 2 stints with the Minnesota Vikings, 13 years in Minnesota, a record of 91, 73, and 6, 57% completion percentage, over 33,000 yards, 239 touchdowns, 7.2 yards per attempt, and 187 yards per game. Obviously, this was way back in the day where it's more of play defense, run the ball, don't turn the ball over. And what Fran did outside of just the passing game, just changing the game for the quarterback in a whole of running around. We all see the highlights of him running 30, 40 yards behind the line of scrimmage and find a way to make a play. Now that's not necessarily regular, but you see it more often with these younger quarterbacks nowadays. So he was the first one to do it. Fran Tarkenton, number 1 Minnesota Vikings quarterback of all time. Mike.
Before I get into Fran, you touched on the Kirk Cousins being an indictment that he's number 2. That's what happens when you have never selected a quarterback in the top 10 in your franchise history. That's what happens. You've got to take that risk and those swings to be worth it. I don't know if you know this, SK, and I know you're not the biggest Bills fan by any means, but the first quarterback the Bills ever selected in the top 10 was Josh Allen. Well, I think that's went pretty well for them as a whole.
Yeah. Very true. So I think we're still waiting on that too. This year could be the year that we trade up to get in that top 10, but never know. But number 1, you said Fran Tarkenton.
Fran Tarkenton. Right? It's got to be 3 Super Bowl appearances. Easily the most consistent quarterback in Vikings history when it comes to winning. And though he had a stint with the Giants, which is just crazy to think about, our best quarterback in franchise history didn't even play every single season as a Vikings quarterback.
Yeah.
He's easily the greatest quarterback in Vikings history. And I'll be honest, I don't think the bar is crazy high. If Kirk Cousins won a Super Bowl, you probably put him at number 1. I think so.
Absolutely. I feel like any of these quarterbacks, if Brett Favre were to brought a Super Bowl in 2009, he would be the greatest Minnesota Vikings quarterback of all time.
Wouldn't that be crazy?
I know, right? As a Packer. But it's the Super Bowl thing. I think that is it. Regardless of who the quarterback is, I think whoever wins the Minnesota Vikings, their first Super Bowl, unless it's just a god-awful quarterback and we find a way to win through running game and defense, which I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon in the NFL. Whoever wins the Minnesota Vikings a Super Bowl, I think is going to be considered the greatest Minnesota Vikings quarterback of all time. You can't argue against, I brought the Vikings their one and only Super Bowl, or at least their first Super Bowl in history. There's nothing you can argue against that. I don't think there is, man.
No. And this is the thing, especially with Kirk. That's been his one indictment. He hasn't won enough playoff games. He has the iconic moment, the throw to Thielen, and then the dagger to Kyle Rudolph against the Saints. But that was 2019 now. You know what I mean? We're in a different decade. We need playoff wins. And again, do I blame him for that loss to the Giants last year? Absolutely not. But at the end of the day, there comes a point where you got to stop spinning your tires and you need to win postseason games. It's now or never.
Yeah, this is definitely a make or break year for Kirk Cousins. But before we get into the quarterback show on Netflix and kind of review the first 2 episodes of that, I did want to reveal Vikings top 10 quarterbacks of all time from ranker.com. Just something I stumbled upon when I was, just doing my research on all quarterbacks in history and getting stats and everything. So their top 10 are, should I go from 1 to 10 or 10 to 1? What do you think?
10 to 1. I think that's always the funner way to do it.
At number 10, they have Brad Johnson. Number 9, they have Wade Wilson. Number 8, they have Joe Kapp. Number 7, they have Kirk Cousins. Now, mind you, this list was made last month. This was made at the end of June. So Kirk Cousins at number 7, Warren Moon at number 6, Brett Favre at number 5, Randall Cunningham at number 4, Dante Culpepper at number 3, Tommy Kramer at 2, and then obviously Fran Tarkenton at number 1. Now, I think as a Vikings fan, a lot of us would laugh at this list. What's one that stands out to you that's either too high or too low on this list?
How on earth is Kirk Cousins at number 7? I mean, like, I know he's not the biggest and brightest player. I get it.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry. It just goes back to what I always talk about, the blatant disrespect. I get it. He hasn't won a ton of playoff games. Well, there's lots of reasons why. He's had 2 years that he's had decent defenses, and they should have went to the playoffs both times. It wasn't his fault Daniel Carlson decided to miss 3 kicks in Green Bay in week 2 of the 2018 season. That's not Kirk Cousins' fault. So, I mean, we talk about this all the time. Kirk will never get respect unless he won a Super Bowl. But even then, you know they'll make it all about Justin Jefferson, but it is what it is.
They'll move the goalposts. Just like how, I mean, that's a perfect transition into this show on Netflix, Quarterback. Kirk Cousins, this is something that stood out, the main thing that stood out to me in this first episode of the show Quarterback on Netflix. He had a quote that was from Margaret Thatcher, whatever.
Thatcher, yeah.
Thagger, whatever the hell her name is. And it says, I could walk on water, but you'd still say that I can't swim. So regardless of what Kirk Cousins does and records he breaks, or I guess the idea of what you have of Kirk Cousins changes because he does something. Regardless of what he does, we're going to continue to find a way to move the goalpost and say, oh, well, it's because he can't do this or he can't do that. So that was something that stood out in the first episode of this show, Quarterback, for me. And I know you said you had a couple things that stood out to you, but again, great show on Netflix. First 2 episodes, I'm locked in, not just the Kirk Cousins aspect, but the Patrick Mahomes aspect as well. Mariota, not so much, kind of boring, but great show. If you guys haven't tapped in already, it came out today. Go ahead, on Netflix. It's called Quarterback. But what was your thoughts on the first 2 episodes, Mike?
So I'll start with what you said in the group chat, which I thought was pretty dead on so far through 2 episodes. Man, Marcus Mariota, he is so boring. He is not even attempting to make a name for himself in the show or be a star of the show whatsoever. I'm hearing about him playing in Oregon, talking about that his wife was a soccer player at Oregon too. Great story and all that, but my God. And you know it's really something when the Kirk Cousins is not the boring one of the show. That's not easy to do. But Marcus Mariota, you have not helped your case in being entertaining through 2 episodes. Okay.
You know, we've actually got a lot from Kirk Cousins in these first 2 episodes. A lot. Like some of the stuff that you haven't seen. One of them was after one of the picks in Philly, that just terrible game last year in week 2, which we kind of all eventually figured out that, hey, it wasn't necessarily Kirk Cousins' fault. It was an option route by Justin Jefferson. But national media didn't necessarily take it that way. They just took it as another Kirk Cousins interception. They had a kind of a behind-the-scenes Justin Jefferson talking to Kirk Cousins immediately after that interception happened as they're walking off the field. JJ pretty much saying, like, that's my bad. I got you. Like, you know, that's on me. Which, again, that's one of those plays where the national media will take it and they'll run with it and say, oh, well, Kirk Cousins just threw an absolutely terrible interception. And that's not the case. And that, again, this show, and I said it when we first talked about it, 2 weeks ago, that I think this is going to actually, you know, give Kirk Cousins a great opportunity to let people love him, you know, give them a chance to see who he really is. A lot of Vikings fans see that, but a lot of people in the national media and just casual Vikings fans don't. So I think it's starting to head that way. I like it. I love that show. But Kirk Cousins, man, good old dad.
So I want to add a couple other things. Patrick Mahomes, for me, has been the clear star of the show. Not that that's really surprising whatsoever. He's Patrick Mahomes. But there was one thing that stuck out to me the most, where Max Crosby was triggering him so badly when they were playing the Raiders at home on Monday Night Football. Yeah, that game's more known probably now for Devontae Adams pushing a cameraman, but I digress. There was one play that really triggered Patrick throughout that game in the first half. Max was touching him after the play again and again and again, but one play in particular stuck out that triggered him and sent him off, where it was like 3 or 4 seconds after he threw the ball. Max Crosby literally channels his inner MMA and gives him a straight jab right to the arm for no reason. And Patrick got really mad, threw a touchdown the play after and said, "I'm him," basically. Then there was a whole brawl after that. But that's the dog mentality that I always talk about, that I wish Kirk would just say, "Screw it. I've got nothing to lose. Let's do it."
Yeah.
But on Kirk, there's one thing I do want to touch on, and it actually triggered me. After that Week 2 loss to Philadelphia, he goes to the team therapist, and he has to vent that way. Bro, go and vent with your teammates. This is what I've always talked about as my biggest pet peeve with Kirk Cousins. Lead from the front. It ain't that difficult. Lead from the front and figure it out with Coach O'Connell, Justin Jefferson, your offensive line, Wes Phillips. I don't care, but I'm sorry. This was not a loss in the playoffs. You want to vent to a therapist? Do that after a playoff loss. We're talking about Week 2. And I've talked to you about this SK prior. Kirk Cousins, it is in his head when he plays Monday Night Football.
It is.
Consistently. He is the worst quarterback on Monday Night Football that I've ever watched for the Minnesota Vikings, unless you count Josh Freeman, but that was literally one game. So I'm going to give Cousins that distinction.
Yeah, and he didn't necessarily reference to that specifically, but it kind of ties into it. He said, on these road games, it kind of, it's different. It kind of brings kind of a nostalgic kind of feel to it, being in this hotel room. And that's not necessarily a bad thing with what he said, but just him taking it as, okay, this is different. Like, this is, not in my comfort zone necessarily. I like it, but this isn't where I'm comfortable. That kind of tells you right there, okay, Kirk Cousins, he looks at these games as different, regardless of, what they may say in interviews. And a lot of guys say the whole cliche thing is, we just treat it like another game. It's just another Sunday, or it's just another Monday game. Kirk Cousins naturally just doesn't think that way. And towards the end of the second episode, which was kind of funny, his dad wrote him a letter at the end of his, I think, freshman year or something in high school, and put his strengths and weaknesses on there. And his strengths were, the normal stuff. You're really competitive, you're really accurate, but his weaknesses were, footwork, and you need to be more of a vocal leader. And he said, that's probably, if you would have gave this note to NFL scouts, it probably would be relevant today. So he acknowledges that he needs to be a more vocal leader. I think he's acknowledged that for a while now since he's been in Minnesota. But it's just, it's showing his shortcomings, and he's kind of open about showing his shortcomings. So again, this show is kind of deep diving into a lot of the things that you don't necessarily get from the, homered Vikings.com page, or your typical Vikings podcast on YouTube or on Spotify. So he's actually opening up and showing us a lot of those shortcomings. But I'm seeing a lot of stuff that I like from Kirk Cousins that I didn't know as well. Like a little more toughness than I thought he was, especially that hit he took in Washington, and he's laying there on the ground and he's saying, well, did we score? No, he got, hit short. And he's like, all right, well, let's get up. Let's finish the drive. So there's a lot of things I like, too, outside of the things that I don't necessarily love from Kirk Cousins in the show.
And I don't want to just keep harping on this, SK. But when his dad literally told him growing up, you're not a vocal enough leader, and now he's married with multiple children. He's in his 30s now, and it's still an issue. It's like, bro, that's on you. And what bothers me, SK, and I've said this before, it's in him, but he's just too afraid to let it out. I don't know what it is. You've got a wife and kids. They're not going to betray you if you show a little bit more grit, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
Just be that you like that guy. for 17 weeks in the regular season and in the postseason. Just be that guy. Just be that guy and commit to it. I don't understand what he's hesitant about. And it bothers me because you see stuff like when I was in at Buffalo live and I see Kirk Cousins at the very back of the huddle. It's like, that's unacceptable. You're the quarterback. I'm not saying you got to lead every huddle, but you've got to be in there with the boys. You can't be at the very back. You're not a defensive lineman. You're not an offensive lineman. Brian O'Neill shouldn't be the one running the huddle. You should be. And I don't care that you're corny Kirk. I'd rather hear corny Kirk for 17 weeks mic'd up than see him at the very back. That's unacceptable.
Well, I mean, I look at guys, I could easily bring up Nick Foles and say, the playoff run he went on, but I want to look at a season in a whole. And not even just a season, but a career as well. You can look at a guy like Matt Ryan. Now, Matt Ryan and Kirk Cousins have been compared to each other, kind of almost the same quarterback outside of Matt Ryan having that MVP season and actually going to the Super Bowl. But I think Kirk has the ability to have that type of season. Maybe not an MVP season, but he has that ability of taking control and saying, all right, I'm putting the team on my back and let's lead us to the Super Bowl. Now, I may be praying and asking to the gods for that to happen, but I think it's within the realm. I think it's possible, but he's got to find it. And this year is the year to do it. I mean, this is do or die this year. This is your last year on this contract. It's either you're a free agent or you're signing an extension. And I believe they already put out a report saying there won't be any extension talks, throughout the season. This is going throughout the regular season and the playoffs. And this is going to the offseason, and Kirk is going to be a free agent. So this is it for him to prove himself one last time. And this is going to be his last close to being big contract that he can get. And as we know, Kirk Cousins likes to get his money, which is nothing wrong with that. But this is, his career summed up in one season. This is what his legacy will be, what he shows this year. So this is how important 2023 is for Kirk Cousins, in my opinion. And we get to see a deep dive in the year before of it in the show Quarterback on Netflix. So again, if you guys haven't watched it already, go tap in, watch it, follow along with us. Again, we're gonna go over 2 or 3 episodes every week and hop on here and chop it up a little bit about it. Anything else you want to talk about?
On a more positive note, I do want to be a bit positive. I've already known how tough he is, so that doesn't prove anything new to me. He'll never get the credit for it from the national media because they never want to give Kirk Cousins credit. They want to talk about that he's the 3rd best quarterback if you had to pick a game. If you had to win one big game, apparently Justin Fields can do that more when he has 6 career wins in the NFL. But the one thing I will give Kirk some credit on, because again, I give fair analysis. That's what I do. I try not to critique through bias one way or the other. The one thing that does intrigue me, SK, and this was talked about during the show, he talked about how difficult it is picking up another offense yet again. Yeah. Well, that's no longer the case now. This is the first time in Kirk Cousins' entire career as Vikings quarterback that he finally has the same play caller back-to-back seasons with Wes Phillips. Thank God for that.
Yeah, and I think going into this season, again, the moves by this front office, maybe they didn't all go the way that they planned. But going into this 2023 season, the season literally, it rests on Kirk Cousins' shoulders. And I think this is the first time where a season does rest on Kirk Cousins' shoulders outside of maybe the first year he came in and was supposed to be that missing piece. But if you look at this roster as a whole, it's not his strongest roster. This may be outside of, his weapons and Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson. This may be one of his weakest rosters as a whole since he's been on the Minnesota Vikings. So I think the front office is saying, okay, look, if we're going to end up giving this guy another extension and he's going to end his career as a Minnesota Viking, we're going to have to see what he's really about. And it sounds so crazy that we're still saying that in his, 13th year in the league or 12th year in the league. But this year is going to rest on Kirk Cousins and his performance. If Kirk Cousins has a really good year, we're going to be a really good team. If Kirk Cousins struggles, our team's going to struggle. So I think this year is a legacy year for Kirk Cousins, and I think it's going to form how we think of Kirk Cousins after he's playing the game of football. This is a crucial year for Kirk, in my opinion. So it could go left, it could go right. Hopefully it goes right. But it's definitely going to be interesting to sit back and watch, especially if you're a Minnesota Vikings fan. So
no, I completely agree. If you look at the way they built the roster, SK, the signing of Josh Oliver, initially when it came out, I was not the happiest. But when you really realize and you do a deep dive on him, Kirk Cousins, I've talked about this before, literally in his last or second last year with Washington, was number one in all of football with passer rating, number one with 2 tight end sets. Yeah. They're going to use a ton of 2 tight end sets for Josh Oliver and TJ Hawkinson. Yeah. And Josh Oliver, if you go back and look at his highlight tape, just with last year with the Ravens, the man was making one-handed catches. Yeah. And I've talked about this before. Baltimore is not the most pass-happy team, especially last season, because Lamar was out through part of that. So I'm really intrigued what he can be, because coming out of college, out of San Jose State, he was a pass catcher. He's developed into a great run blocker, but his strength coming out of college was pass catcher. I could see him having 5 or 6 touchdowns and having the best year of his career, and that would be because of Kirk Cousins. I cannot wait to see what this looks like. And Jordan Addison, too. That pick was to say, Kirk, we've given you all the weapons. It's on you now. The O-line, you like Garrett Bradbury. That was on you. Literally, he said, and I quote, "I'm so happy Garrett's back." Well, if Garrett's running full speed ahead behind you, you wanted him back. So I don't want to hear about the interior offensive line anymore. You got 2 stud tackles. You have the probably best receiving core he's had in Minnesota, aside from maybe 2018 and 19, just because how good Adam was. But JJ and Jordan Addison with KJ, TJ Hawkinson, I mean, that has the potential to be a top 5 passing offense if everything clicks.
Yeah, and the Garrett Bradbury decision wasn't the only thing they listened, with Kirk Cousins about. Kirk Cousins also wanted Alexander Mattison back because he feels comfortable with him in the backfield next to him. So that's another guy where the front office said, you know what? Because let's be real, when the season ended, we weren't expected. I think we all kind of said our goodbyes. Alexander Mattison, you're going to do great at your next destination. You're going to be a starter somewhere else. We're going to figure things out with Dalvin or just go extremely cheap at the running back position. So I think his input at, on the Alexander Mattison front also was took into consideration for signing Alexander Mattison back to this team and moving on from Dalvin Cook. So that's just another example of this front office saying, all right, Kirk, look, we listened to what you wanted. We got you another weapon. Defense is a whole lot younger, but they'll be improved. And I'm fully convinced the defense will be improved. Now, I know we're missing Eric Kendricks now, Patrick Peterson, Zadarius Smith, Dalvin Tomlinson. I can go on, and possibly even Danielle Hunter. But I think just the leadership on the defensive side of the ball and Brian Flores, and hopefully we do keep Danielle Hunter and that works out and he's happy and he's playing to his full potential with his hand in the dirt where he needs to be. I think this defense will be better. So, everything's lining up perfect for Kirk Cousins to have a really good year. And again, like we both agreed here, this is a legacy year for Kirk Cousins. We all have this bad taste in our mouth from whether it be the last play of the season against the Giants where he threw short on 4th and 8, or whether it be his career in whole. We have a bad taste in our mouth with Kirk Cousins. This year could be the turning point. And again, it sounds crazy. What is he, 36 years old, 37 years old right now?
I want to say 35. I could be wrong, though.
35. I think 36 when the season starts or something like that. So, again, this could be the turning point to where it's like, okay, all right, Kirk, second year in this offense, got the offensive-minded head coach, has all the weapons he needs, has a decent enough running game, has a good enough defense. This team can make a run. That's a possibility this year. That is a possibility this year. the horizon for what this team can do and what Kirk Cousins can do is extremely wide. It could be really bad or it could be extremely good, and that's the exciting part about going into the season. But again, Kirk Cousins, man, crucial year for not just the Minnesota Vikings, but Kirk Cousins, career in a whole. So I'm excited to sit back and watch it, though, man. It's going to be fun to watch.
And the thing on Alexander Madison, SK, is a really good point, too. A lot of people forget he's a better pass blocker than Dalvin Cook.
Yep.
A lot of people want to put that 4th and 8 on Cousins. Feel free to do that. But you know who the guy who tripped Ezra Cleveland was? It was Dalvin Cook. And he gave him zero chance to help block Dexter Lawrence, and he went right through and penetrated through the offensive line.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll actually miss Dalvin that much. There's people, and I know, how dare you, Mike, say that. Aside from explosiveness, Madison is a bowling ball. He's tough as nails. He's a great pass blocker. And SK, the best year I've seen in my entire life, aside from 2009, was 2017. What did the Vikings have that year through circumstance of Dalvin Cook getting hurt? A running back committee.
Yep.
Welcome to the 2020s, Vikings. It's taken you a long time. You've been behind for the longest period of time. Keep paying running backs. I'm so excited to see what this year can be. And on the Brian Flores point, I agree with you 100% wholeheartedly. The defense will be better, but are they going to be better to be 25th or actually relevantly being better to like 18th? Because they're going to need a significant jump if they want to make a legit run, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think we'll be sitting around 20. I think we'll be sitting. That's if we keep Danielle Hunter. I think that's the biggest factor, obviously, because that is your pass rush. That's it. If you don't have Danielle Hunter, you don't have a pass rush. If you have Danielle Hunter, you got a pretty good pass rush because hopefully Marcus Davenport stays healthy and you can, go into all these PFF stats, or you can look back to 2021 with Marcus Davenport and the New Orleans Saints and say, hey, he's, one of the best pass rushers in the league when he's healthy. If he stays healthy, we could have a pretty good pass rushing tandem. We're just going to be, a little thin on the inside, depending on what happens with Jacqueline Roy, rookie out of LSU. So that's going to be interesting to watch. Again, we're kind of getting off the Kirk Cousins, subject here in the quarterback position subject. But no, I think Danielle Hunter, that's the biggest factor for the defense, whether it's going to be top 20 or it's going to be just outside 20. Because obviously we know pass rushing is one of the biggest factors in the NFL nowadays. But no, look, Alexander Madison, running back by committee. You said it yourself, 2017, the best year that you saw live in person that you remember. Jerick McKinnon and Latavius Murray. And Latavius Murray had really big games that year. He had 100, 125, 150-yard games a couple times, if I'm not mistaken. So he had some really big games that year, and we ran the ball effectively. We may have not had the home run threat, which that's what we had this year. That was it. It wasn't necessarily a consistent running game from Dalvin Cook this year. It was lose a yard, get to
fumble,
no gain, bang it for 35, -1, -2. Like, and it's almost the Adrian Peterson effect. We had the same thing with Adrian Peterson, to where he'd have, 3 or 4 rushes for 5 yards, and then he'd bang off a 75-yard touchdown. You're sitting there like, okay, we're good. We have a great running game. So I think we're going to get more of a consistent running game with Alexander Madison, and not just Alexander Madison, but more than likely Ty Chandler. And I've heard, I think it was Score North, I think it was Judd, said that Ty Chandler's not a lock to be running back 2. Yeah, Kene is actually making a push for running back 2. And at this point, he's a veteran. He knows the system now. And I'm sure he's improved his game outside of just being a kick returner. So I think he's pushing Ty Chandler. But ultimately, I think it will be Ty Chandler to take that running back 2 spot. But no, that running back by committee, man, it's some of our best years have been with running back by committee.
Yes.
So
as much as I loved Adrian Peterson, aside from 2009, they didn't go on deep playoff runs.
Nope.
And what was the reason, SK? Let's be honest. They went on that deep playoff run. It was Brett Favre in the passing game. It was not Adrian Peterson. It wasn't. He was a big part of it, but he was not the main catalyst of why they went on a deep playoff run. Mm-hmm. You don't win with running the football now. Like, yes, you could close out games that way, but you will not win being a run-first team. The Titans are a great example of it. It has its peak. You can only go so far. The Ravens are also showing that. Yeah. You could be number one in rushing offense. It doesn't matter. You don't win in the postseason that way because teams will make sure, okay, we'll stack the box, beat us throwing the football. Oh, wait, you can't? Oh, goodbye. And that's just the way it is. Like, I'm really, really excited for Ken A too because I've been clamoring for this man to get reps, especially on screens. Mm-hmm. Like, no disrespect to Dalvin Cook, but our screen game was not particularly good last year, aside from a couple of plays. The New Orleans one with Madison and the one against the Colts. Aside from those two, it was really, really bad. Mm-hmm. I could see Ken A being a really good screen running back because you have Ham beside him in a different set, two, running back set, have Ham go out and block, set the edge, and have Ken A on a screen. I mean, he could break one for a 70-yard touchdown. He has that type of potential.
Yeah, and that's why we should be excited for these preseason games. Let's not just bypass preseason and say, oh, well, week one's in 2 months. No, this preseason is going to be really interesting. Yes, we're not going to be seeing Kirk Cousins. It'll be a whole lot of Nick Mullins. But you're also going to be seeing the rookie quarterback, Jaren Hall. You're going to be seeing that running back battle between Ty Chandler, Kene Nwangwu. You're also going to see McBride, rookie out of UAB, who everybody is excited about, who he grabbed in the 7th round. We got that guy, Andre Carter, undrafted out of Army. We got Ivan Pace, the Cincinnati linebacker, undrafted. There's going to be a lot of those guys trying to earn spots on that 53-man roster that the fan base is extremely excited about. Ivan Pace, again, being one of those guys. Andre Smith, who, with how we're kind of moving with this, pass rushing room, there's going to be a spot open for Andre Carter to make this team. He's just got to show something in the preseason. So I'm excited for those games. We're just barely over a month away from seeing the Minnesota Vikings in action on, in US Bank Stadium. So I'm excited for it, man. I'm excited for these position battles. And again, Kirk Cousins, make or break season. So
who's cornerback too, SK? I mean, if I'm being honest, I could see a real scenario where literally Kevin O'Connell benches Byron Murphy and has every other corner play. There is not one guy as of today, preseason that I trust. And no disrespect, Caleb Evans, concussion issues, and honestly very inconsistent play due to that because he's been in and out of the lineup. Andrew Booth, man, I'm worried about his injury history. You got Joe John Williams, Tay Gowan. Who's going to step up? Is Najee Thompson going to shock us? Who knows? We'll see.
That'd be nice, right?
That'd be quite the story. I was happy for Rapp that he got to do that. So good luck to Najee on his, race for a playoff spot. Roster spot. Hopefully he can become a good special teamer because that's probably what he's going to need to do.
It's a lot of question marks in that cornerback room.
Yeah. There's one guy that I trust. I don't know why we didn't bring back Duke Shelley. I really don't get it.
I don't know, man. I really don't know. And that's a guy just off the attitude and the dog. I wanted that back in our cornerback room. But again, so many question marks in that cornerback room. Andrew Booth, we don't know this is it. If he can't
this really is it. I know he's only year 2, but it is. Yeah.
Chalk it up as a loss. Bad pick by Kwesi. It's, this is it for him as far as injuries go. Even to the point to where there's reports to where Mekhi Blackmon might be a starter going into week 1, which is crazy to me because, when we drafted him, nobody knew who he was. Nobody.
Yeah.
Outside of, the pure draft experts.
Yes. He went under the radar 100%. Yeah.
Even when you ask those guys, they're kind of just like, he's okay. He's a good player. Not a guy that's going to step in and be a day 1 starter. So for us to be saying that Mekhi Blackmon is in the mix to be cornerback 2 on the other side of Byron Murphy. And let's not rule out Byron Murphy might be one of those guys that we just kind of move around. He may be an inside guy half the time. He may be an outside guy.
They're going to have no choice. If they literally, like, Jay Ward's another guy who's a DB in this room. Like, it's so many young players. But if, say, for example, we're playing Amon-Ra St. Brown and the Lions, I almost said the Bears because his brother Iniquius plays for the Bears. Yeah. And he's playing the slot. No, you've got to shadow him. Whoever wide receiver 1 is, Byron Murphy, like no question. It's all first and second year players, aside from like Tay Gowan, who's barely got to play through unfortunate circumstances, being traded to Philadelphia for Zach Ertz, never really getting a fair shake, coming to Minnesota. I missed what's his name? Kylan Barnes, another one. Like SK, like I know this sounds nuts, but all the corners in our room have a shot to make the team. Like there's nobody who's got to run with it or run away with it right now as a front runner, aside from Murphy and probably Blackman, which is crazy to say.
Now let me throw a wild card in there, which I think this makes complete sense. Cameron Bynum might be a candidate to be in that cornerback room. I know he's played safety the past 2 years, but he was a cornerback coming out of Cal. So I think he could be one of those guys that we kind of move down to the slot, or he could be possibly a hybrid type guy to where he can bounce up and be up top, or he can come down into the box and play that slot corner. And I think it makes sense because our safety room is extremely deep. Our safety room's deep. Our cornerback room is thin. So I think we may take a guy that's versatile, that can play the cornerback position, and we take him and we play him at cornerback a little bit to keep him on this team, because I know a lot, half the fan base is kind of out on Cameron Bynum. They're ready to see Lewisine, which is completely understandable. He's a first-round pick. He's Kwesi's first-round pick. We want to see what he can do. We understand he was injured last season, but he's our safety of the future. Even outside of Harrison Smith, we need to see what he can do. So where does that leave Cam Bynum? Josh Metellus, another guy who, outside of just playing safety, plays a huge role on special teams. I think he plays on every special teams team. He plays on kickoff, kick return. He's not going anywhere.
No.
So and then we just
Jay Ward's another one too. We don't know where he's going to play. He's going to be very interesting. Mind you, I love the ability of versatility because with our DB room, we need it. Mm-hmm. So, but no, it's the thing is though, SK, I get what you're saying. But I think that's a testament of how weak this cornerback room is as of now that we're talking about Bynum possibly playing. We talked about the 3 safety look last year. I'd be a lot more into that idea with Bynum, but we'll see.
Well, yeah, that plays into him being kind of the hybrid role. You can still bring Lewisine up in the box or Harrison Smith up in the box, then bounce Cam Bynum outside to the slot. So, no, I think that's more of where we're going to be heading as far as what the defense is going to look like. We're going to get a lot of different looks, but I think we're going to get a lot of those 3 safety looks to where it is Harrison Smith, Lewisine, and Bynum. But do not rule out Josh Metellus making a push for one of those safety spots. Like, yes, Josh Metellus is a dog, so don't rule him out and taking one of those spots. Obviously not the Harrison Smith position, but don't be surprised. Josh Metellus is in the mix for that, but he's not going anywhere. He will be on the 53-man roster. Cam Bynum, I don't know. I can't say that as confident as I can say with Josh Metellus. What about you?
No, it's crazy. Bynum, to me, I could honestly see him being a surprise cut in August. If he's getting toasted in coverage again in preseason, like, at some point you got to say, that's not acceptable. And we know Brian Flores coming from that Belichick tree. They don't accept mistakes. Yeah. They will absolutely put you in the doghouse the first second they get if you do something boneheaded. And if he does some of the stuff in coverage that he did last year, he ain't playing week 2 if he makes the team as a starter. Like, for me, his ceiling is a starter, and his floor is he's cut in August. That's a surprise cut. I have no idea what Cameron Bynum is going to do. The movie story it might be going somewhere else in a few months. So we'll see.
Oh no, Cam. No, I want to see Cam get better. I feel like he's gonna get better over time. But again, I'm ready to see Lewis seen. I'm ready.
Aren't
to
we
see
all?
I don't want to wait any longer. I don't want any, he wasn't ready week 1 because he didn't know the system. I don't want to hear any of that. I need to see Lewis seen on the defense starting at safety week 1. I don't think there's any question about it. That needs to be what happens. If not, then we got to really start looking at Kwesi and these draft picks. The second year draft is over now. Now we got to start seeing some production out of these draft picks.
Yeah. Asamoah too. We need to see him as well. Like there's a lot of guys that are going to be playing legitimate snaps. With me, SK, like if Lewis Cine is not the quote unquote starter, but he's playing a lot of reps, I don't care. That's fine. If he's not starting week 1 because he's coming back from that injury, but he's a big part of the defensive scheme, fine. But he's got to be playing week 1, 100%. If I don't see him out there aside from special teams, I mean, we got to start calling out Kwesi and saying maybe he doesn't know how to draft.
Well, yeah, we talk about it being a make or break season for Kirk Cousins. Well, it's almost a make or break season for Kwesi. Like you said, Brian Asamoah sliding into that starting linebacker role who Kwesi was big on.
Yeah.
Let's see what he's made of. Can he be a starting linebacker in the NFL? Because he's kind of, a higher guy. He's a little on the smaller side. Can he handle getting off blocks in the NFL? Andrew Booth, 2nd-round pick in his first draft.
Traded up for him.
Lewis Cine, which, again, injury can't necessarily throw that.
Yes, that's different. I agree.
But if it continues, to happen, or if he doesn't perform, then we're kind of like, well, Lewis Cine, Andrew Booth, a Caleb Evans, which I kind of give to him. A Caleb Evans is a baller, but if you can't stay healthy and you're getting all these concussions, then your best ability is your availability. And you're not giving me that.
Yeah.
Brian Asamoah, again, if he doesn't perform. Who else was in that first?
Talk about the first class?
Yeah, the first.
Ed Ingram. I mean, he's a massive one, and he's going to start at right guard. We know it. Yeah. I was a huge Ed Ingram fan. I still am. But we need a big jump up in year 2, especially in pass pro, because it was not good enough. So there's a lot of guys that got to step up in this class. Jalen Naylor's another one who could be a steal. I really hope he breaks out, for the love of God, because right now, Ryan Wright, the undrafted free agent punter, is our number 1 player from that rookie class.
Yeah, you're completely right. So, I mean, looking at the receiver room real quick, because you brought up Jalen Naylor. Obviously, you got JJ, you got KJ, you got Jordan Addison, and then
Brandon Powell.
Yeah, Powell. Forgot about Powell.
Did you mention Reagor?
Jalen Reagor, which Reagor may be a cut. I think that's probably a cut candidate right there. I don't know what the cap situation is if you do cut him.
It's not great because he's on a last year of his rookie deal. It's kind of like what Bradbury was last year, where you're eating all that money. It's not great.
Okay, so after Reagor, then you got Naylor, then you got Tristan Jackson, my guy.
Yeah.
And then I know I'm missing somebody else, but that's probably going to be
Malik Knowles, right? The Kansas State undrafted free agent player as well.
He'll be practice squad more than likely.
Yes.
But if we're looking at that, obviously JJ, KJ.
Did we mention that? We mentioned Addison, right? Yeah.
Yeah, top 3 obviously are on the team. After that, obviously we need to roster at least 5. Yeah, at least 5, I'd say. So 2 of the guys out of Brandon Powell, Jalen Reagor, Jalen Naylor, Tristan Jackson, and Knowles, 2 of those guys are going to make the team.
Call me crazy, SK. I know this is a hot take to some people. Reagor's making the team. He's our only punt returner that I trust. As much as people want to clown him.
Powell's the punt returner.
Yes, but I just feel like Reagor is more reliable, and he's done it a lot more. Now, mind you, Viking fans can remember Brandon Powell taking a punt return to the house against the Vikings when he was with the Rams. So maybe he will make the team. If he does, great. But as of right now, And remember, we can't count this out. Matt Daniels loves Jalen Reagor. That matters. Remember him. I'm not going to get into details on how thorough he went about the description, but he's in love with Jalen Reagor's ability as a player. So I doubt he gets cut. I really doubt it.
Yeah, well, I think between Reagor and Powell, whoever, because I think they're going to be battling for that punt returner spot. So whoever
definitely, to some extent, for sure.
Yeah, whoever wins that punt returner spot is going to get the roster spot, and the other, I think, will be cut. Now that leaves us with 3 guys: Jalen Naylor, Tristan Jackson, and Knowles. Now Knowles, I think, will be practice squad. So really, it's between Jalen Naylor and Tristan Jackson. I love Tristan Jackson. I think he deserves a chance, but I think just Naylor being Kwesi's draft pick and him kind of having that push and that hype when we did draft him, and him actually showing us something last season, I think he'll actually get that last wide receiver spot. But no, again, that's an interesting talk, and that's something to look for in the preseason. What receivers are going to stand out? And I think Reagor needs to get a whole lot of playing time in preseason. Play him every game from start to finish.
Showcase him so you could trade him for a 7th with a 7th.
Yeah, either showcase him or just give him work. Worst comes to worst.
He needs it. I mean, for the love of God, the man ran so many incorrect routes. He needs as many snaps as possible.
Stopping on routes. And no. Again, worst comes to worst, you give the guy work in preseason. You give your wide receiver 4/wide receiver 5 a ton of work in preseason. That's the worst that can happen. I'm not going to bring up injury because obviously we don't want to even put that in the air. But no, worst that can happen is you're giving your guy plenty of work. So I think you play the hell out of Reagor in the preseason, play the hell out of Brandon Powell, and then obviously you're going to see a lot of Jalen Naylor. You're going to see a lot of Tristan Jackson, Knowles, and I'm sure there's a couple other guys that we're not thinking of right now or we probably don't even know that are on the roster right now that we're going to see. So, again, another position group that's interesting, and it's funny, we turned from being top 5 quarterbacks of all time in Minnesota Vikings history. Now we're going over position battles that we're leading into in preseason, starting with the running back position and the wide receiver position. So pretty funny, but that just shows how close we are to the season, guys. We're really, really close to preseason. Again, 22 days until the Hall of Fame game, which this year, who is the Hall of Fame game this year? Do you know, Mike?
I want to say the Jets are in it, and I can't name the other team.
Let me see. Because I know we're right around the corner. August 3rd, I believe, is the date for the Hall of Fame game. So, and this is the slowest time of the year. This is,
Well, Kwesi's going to give us some news with the new Hunter stuff, and they still have $18 million in cap space. They're going to do something with that. I mean, so we'll see how what happens with that. It's going to be interesting.
Jets Browns, August 3rd.
A lot of interesting storylines there. We could probably – don't be surprised Deshaun Watson's playing in that game. He needs reps.
Yeah,
My God, he was rusty last year.
Yes, he does. But we play on the 10th against the Seahawks on the road. So that'll be our first preseason game. And that is about, 29 days away or so?
Why can't we play the Seahawks even at home? Like, even in a preseason game, we got to play them on the road. Like, I know we played them a couple years ago at home, right? Yeah, we beat them, a couple years ago at home. But my God, why is it always Seattle on the road? It feels like all the time, even preseason.
It definitely does. It definitely does.
The preseason, you don't have. It's not a scale. You could do this, Mike. It's a solid. Jeez.
Just throw us a home game against Seattle. Jesus.
My God.
But I do think we have 2 home preseason games this year. I think
Arizona and Tennessee, right?
Yeah. Yes, correct.
Because they're doing the scrimmages with those 2.
Yeah, and then we
my boy Will Levis. You're gonna get to see him live in action.
Will Levis. Oh man, that's gonna be interesting to watch. But and then week 1, Tampa Bay season opener. And before we get out of here, I definitely got to remind you guys, we will be doing a big event, Skol Fest. It's going to be, I'm not going to disclose the location yet because we're about 98% locked in. I'm not going to say it till we're 100% locked in, but Skol Fest is coming to Minneapolis. All your favorite content creators, Rap, Yogi, GG Sports, Dave from Minnesota Sports Talk, Mike, unfortunately, is going to be in Canada, but I'm sure he'll be tapped in with this.
Yeah, I'll be there on the chat for sure.
And then we're working on a couple more content creators as well. We're going to be doing a bunch of giveaways. We're giving away tickets to the season opener the following morning. So be sure you can win tickets the night before if you show up there in person.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to just spend a little bit of time here until SK can end the stream here. So I'm just going to give a little bit of a rundown of that game against the Bucks week 1. A lot of interesting storylines. Baker Mayfield plays the Vikings as a starting quarterback. We'll see what happens with that. Hopefully the Vikings could play Baker a lot better than they did when he was the Browns quarterback and not losing this time around. Be very interesting to see what the Bucks look like without Tom Brady at the helm. I think defensively they're kind of in shambles, but Levante David returned there. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. But I think the Vikings should start out the season strong. Hopefully week 1 goes their way. I would hope that they make a statement week 1. Hopefully SK, Rap, Justin, Dave, Jamie, and Casey, and everybody who will be at that game live will be very, very happy by the end of the game. And hopefully the Vikings make a statement because, as SK alluded to earlier, this is a massive season for Kirk Cousins. And everything that represents, him needing to start the season out strong with the same play caller in Wes Phillips, Kevin O'Connell in year 2 as a head coach. You hope the Vikings can make a statement early on this season because this season will define this team, good, bad, or ugly. Because if this season goes in the right direction, Kirk Cousins could potentially be back on an extension. Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi could be looked at as one of the best head coach GM duos in football. Then you look at other things that are very relevant. If this goes the other way, Kirk Cousins' era in Minnesota is probably finished. You look at that, they're going to be probably drafting a quarterback for the first time since Teddy Bridgewater in the first round. They'll probably be aggressive because Kwesi was adamant about wanting to make a statement last year and being aggressive and potentially drafting a quarterback like Bryce Young was apparently their target. So if Kirk Cousins doesn't deliver this year, I mean, who's to say they won't make a run at Drake May or Caleb Williams from USC? So it's going to be very, very interesting what happens this year with the Vikings. I'm really excited for it. Cannot wait for the preseason to get going here. So many question marks. But it's going to be a good one, ladies and gentlemen. It really is going to be a good one. So we'll see what happens. So I want to leave it on this note here that Kirk Cousins, we're going to, is one of the main 3 guys on this show, quarterback from Netflix. He has a real opportunity here to state his claim as one of the best Vikings quarterbacks of all time. If he can go and cement himself this season, it's going to be so interesting to see what he does as the leader of this locker room. I want to see Kirk O'Chains. I want to see Captain Kirk. I want to see that you like that guy throughout the season. No more do I want to see you the back of the line behind everybody in the huddle, being in the very back so you could just walk back to the sideline easy. Kirk, you got to lead from the front now. You got to be the reason why everyone talks about the Minnesota Vikings, not Justin Jefferson anymore. I don't want to hear that he's the end-all, be-all Minnesota. Vikings. You're the quarterback, Kirk. You got to lead from the front. Stop the ESPN narratives about Justin Fields being a better quarterback than you, Jared Goff being a better quarterback than you. You're probably going to get disrespected in the top 100 when that comes out in a few months' time. Just embrace it. Say, screw it. I don't care what the national media thinks about me. I don't care what people say about me in the fan base or on forums or on podcasts. I'm going to be myself. I'm going to get out of my shell. I'm going to lead this team to where they want to go. Because that is how you can make a statement, Kirk Cousins. Not all these other crazy, scared ways of showing that you're a leader through being on the iPad, saying that we got this quietly on the sideline. Enough with that. Be the guy for this team. Be the guy for this organization to say, hey, that's what we wanted to see on this contract here. And prove yourself as a guy who is the franchise quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings. No longer will it be a question that you're a top 10 quarterback if you lead this team from the front. Go and make a statement. No longer do I want to see Kirk Cousins as a passenger. I want to see you as the dog, as the you like that guy, the Kirko change that we all love in this fan base. Because everybody was on board with that. And Kirk, the minute that Kirko change thing hit his peak, what did you do? You let Patrick Peterson run the ship. And then it died. And then shortly after, the team started to fade. What great quarterbacks do is lead when things are bad and lead when things are good. And I want to see you holding leads throughout a season. Because I don't know if enough people know this. But Kirk Cousins, when he has a 7+ point lead, is in the 30s for passer rating, near the very bottom of starting quarterbacks. Well, I want to see you punch people in the mouth. Starting week 1 with the Bucs, you have an opportunity to make a statement there. Go and win that game by 17 to 20 points. Do something you haven't done for a long period of time since you beat the Chargers in Los Angeles, a game that SK was at, where Afadi Adenabo took a touchdown to the house. I want to see Kirk Cousins be a dog. I want to see him say to myself as a fan of this team, that's my quarterback. Do what you did, Kirk, during the Pro Bowl this year. And a lot of people laugh at the Pro Bowl. But the instinct and the fierceness I loved from Kirk Cousins during the Pro Bowl. I don't know how many people actually watched it. But every time he threw a touchdown, he celebrated with the guys. Every time he led a big play, he celebrated. Don't worry that you're on ESPN, Fox, CBS, Amazon for Thursday Night Football. Ignore all that garbage. It doesn't matter. What I need Kirk Cousins to do is lead from the front for this organization. If we want to be taken seriously, it starts and ends with Kirk Cousins. Now, I don't know how much longer I have here. I'm going to continue here about the defense. Brian Flores, you've got to find a way to keep Danielle Hunter. That must happen. No matter what you do, Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah and Brian Flores, you need to sit down, Danielle Hunter, and hatch this out. If it needs to be a 1-year extension to his contract, then so be it. You cannot have Marcus Davenport lead this defensive line from the front. A player who had half a sack last season. That's not good enough. At the end of the day, we need Danielle Hunter back here to get the best out of this 3-4 defense. I also want to see if Kwesi's going to be aggressive in free agency. Guys like Jadeveon Clowney are still available. Marcus Peters, the cornerback. That former Minnesota Viking defensive end, Yannick Ngakoue is still available. Heck, you could bring him in. That'd be quite the catch. be a third man in a rotation, something the Vikings have not been able to execute for a long period of time since they had Brian Robinson as a third man many, many years ago with Everson Griffin and Daniil Hunter when he was first starting up. They haven't had that luxury for a long period of time. So I cannot wait to see what this season is. It's going to be very exciting. It's going to be very interesting. And I hope the Vikings don't let us down, because this would be the first time that the Vikings go back to the playoffs since 08, 09 with Brett Favre. Would have been the first time they went to back-to-back playoff seasons. Brett Favre was our quarterback. That led us to the playoffs the second time after he took over the job from Travaris Jackson, because he signed, obviously, as a free agent after he left the Jets. That's how long it goes. 2 decades ago was the last time the Vikings went to the playoffs back-to-back seasons. A narrative they need to kill. It was why I wanted Mike Zimmer out for so many years. This just terrible roadblock that year in, year out, no matter what, the Minnesota Vikings would find a way to miss the playoffs the following year after a playoff season. 2015, they got in. 2016, they missed. 2017, they got in. 18 missed. 19 in. 2020, 2021, out. And then Mike Zimmer was fired. So Kevin O'Connell, you want to make a statement and have a legit chance to be head coach of the year, in my personal opinion, go and get this team back to the playoffs this year. As much as I think Kirk Cousins needs to lead for the front on the offensive side of the ball, for this team, Kevin O'Connell, you got to continue to lead from the front and be a leader. Because as your adage, your philosophy always states, be at your best when your best is required. We need your best, Kevin O'Connell, for 17 games for this team to have success and go back to the playoffs. Because as much as the players matter, leadership from the head coach and the coaching staff, Brian Flores, Wes Phillips, Matt Daniels, we need all of you to step up on the special teams, defense, and offense side of the ball if we're going to go on a run. So, on that note, I think I'm going to end it here. Take it easy, everybody. Skol Vikings. Peace.